everyone, and welcome to Northshore. My name is Samantha, and I'm a part of the team here, and it's great to have you with us. I am so excited because today is a very special day. It's Community Serve Day. Around 2,000 people from our church and the surrounding community are currently out serving at 32 schools in the Northshore and Lake Washington school districts. Right now, there's painting being done, gardening, and pressure washing. There are volunteers helping teachers get their classrooms set up, cleaned up, and ready for students to come in just a couple weeks. So because of that, our service is gonna look a little bit different today. We wanted to share a message with you that Scotty gave a while back because we think it speaks directly to the kind of church we want to continue being, which is one that is together for our neighbors, the next gen, and those in need. It's exciting to see our church living that mission out today by serving in our local schools. So thank you again to everyone who's out right now participating in Community Serve Day, and let's dive into the message.
I want to start with a little exercise. So when you came in this room, if you're in this room, you sat down, there was a card on your chair, looks something like this. Everybody grab this card right now. Grab the card and grab a pen from the chair in front of you. You're gonna need that as well. If you're watching online, you can just take a piece of paper and just write down this phrase on the card. I wouldn't be here without blank. I wouldn't be here without blank. Everyone got your card, got your pen? So right now, I just want you to write down the name of a person in your life who's helped you become the person you are today. So just write down on just one side, the person who's helped you become who you are today, not necessarily your parents, but someone else who has supported you or coached you or mentored you or invested in you, just a name. Everybody writing? Seeing a lot of pens going. Just write down a name. Everybody have one written down? So on my card, I wrote down the name Scott. Not me, it's actually a different Scott. I'm just writing my own name. This Scott and I have known each other for almost 25 years. We met when I was a sophomore in college. And at the time when we met, my life was pretty messy. I was living 2,000 miles from friends and family and felt far from God, felt pretty lost in life. By the way, anyone else ever felt far from God or kind of lost in your life? Like you just needed someone to come alongside of you in those moments? Well, Scott came alongside me. He was a PhD student at the time. He was volunteering in the college ministry that I was attending. And one day he walked up to me, didn't know me at all, and walked up and said, "Hey, would you like to get lunch?" I said, "Sure, I'd love that." And we went out to lunch. And I don't remember saying anything that impressive. My life certainly wasn't that impressive at the time. So I was kind of surprised when he asked me to go out to lunch again. And before long, we were meeting every week, once a week, every week. I actually got a picture of just outside the student union where we used to meet in these white tables with these uncomfortable red chairs. I can't tell you how many hours I spent in these chairs talking to Scott. And he didn't just ask me about my problems or my struggles. He shared about his own, about going through a divorce and then getting remarried. We talked about faith and doubt and loss and disappointment. And he always listened to me. Even when I wasn't making any sense or even when I wasn't making the best decisions. And I just have to say, I can't tell you how much those conversations meant to me. A few years later, Scott actually became the pastor of the college ministry that I was part of. And when I graduated, he asked me to come on staff at the church and be an intern. And I told him, "I love you, but I will never work in a church." And by the way, never say never to God. He has a funny sense of humor about that because a year later, I actually went on staff at that church to work for Scott, and I've been on staff at a church ever since. So don't say never to God because you just never know what's going to happen. But Scott saw potential in me that I couldn't see. And then he gave me these opportunities to lead and to speak. And that experience inspired me to go to seminary, so I enrolled in this school up in Vancouver, British Columbia. And get this, a few months after that, Scott moved with his family to Bellevue, Washington to be a pastor at a church there. So about once a month, I would drive across the border to spend time with him and his kids. He even asked me to be the godfather of his son. How cool is that? A few years later, I moved back to California to become a pastor. And every so often, I would fly up here to see Scott, or Scott would fly down to see me. In fact, I remember one time Scott was in town and he called me up to meet up and I just said, I'm too busy, I don't have time. But in truth, I was at home, I was feeling discouraged, depressed, didn't want to leave the house. So I just kind of lied to him. And then a few hours later, there was a knock at my door. Any guesses on who it was? It was Scott. Because here's the thing, he's just always been there for me. He's always been there for me. Fast forward a few years after I met Nina, Scott was one of the first people I called. And a little over a year later, Scott stood with the two of us to officiate our wedding. There, I have a lot less gray hair. See right there? And then afterwards, he gave me the biggest hug. There is so much history in that hug. But the story's not over yet, because fast forward a few more years, God called our family up here to this church in Kirkland, Washington. So now Scott's kids, who I grew up playing with, or who grew up playing with me, get to play with my kids. And Scott and I once again get together every Thursday afternoon. I won't tell you where, because I don't want you people showing up, but we get together every Thursday afternoon. You see, I wouldn't be here without Scott. I wouldn't be who I am without his role, his influence, his leadership, his investment in my life. So why am I telling you all this? Because this is how the kingdom of God works. This is how faith in Jesus is passed on. It's not primarily through books or sermons or events. It's passed on through people, life on life, one generation to the next. The last church where I served, we used this image of 3 chairs. I thought it could be helpful for you to see and kind of walk through today. So this middle chair, this chair represents you right now. This is the chair you're literally sitting in right now. It's why sometimes you come to church, you get a little grumpy because someone's sitting in your chair, right? This represents your life today, your relationships, your career, the faith you hold to. This represents who you are. But here's the thing, no one gets to this chair on their own. Somebody brought you here. Somebody invited you here. Someone helped you find your way to be the person you are. It's like the person you are today. Which leads us to this chair. This chair represents that name on your card, the person who came before you, the person who invested in you, who believed in you, who supported you. Maybe back when you were a skeptic of this whole faith thing. Or maybe when you were going through a really hard time in your life and they picked you up or held you or just walked with you through it. Or maybe you got brought here before you can even remember. I got brought to church before I was just a little baby. I can't even remember those days. Somebody brought me here. That's what this represents. And you can imagine beyond this chair, there's another chair and another chair and another chair going all the way back to Jesus, whose story has been passed down for 2,000 years, one chair at a time, which brings us to this chair. Any guesses on what this represents? The people who will come after you. The people who will be sitting in your chair 100 years from now when you're dead and gone, and I'm 145 years old, right? The next generation. But here's the thing about this chair. People don't accidentally find their way into this chair. Someone has to find them. Someone has to care about them. Someone has to chase after them. Someone has to believe in them. And here's the other thing about this chair. It's easy to lose sight of this chair. You see, when you're in this phase of life, kind of the older phase of life, you can start to believe, I've paid my dues. I've served my time. I've got a sunset to look forward to over here. And when you're in this middle stage of life, you've got a life to build. You have demands. There's so much pressure, so much going on. There's so much to focus on in this chair. And it's easy to wonder, well, who's going to be here? And besides, young people, kind of messy, not always respectful. They don't always believe what you believe or care about what you care about. And so what happens is we kind of become 2-chair kind of people. 2-chair kind of people where it's so easy to get kind of, stuck in the past or focused on the present, and we lose sight of who needs to be sitting here. And here's the thing. This happens in churches too. Churches that have a great legacy, a great past, that were once full and flourishing, but over time, they begin to decline. They begin to decline. You drive by churches like this all the time. Churches that were once busy and bustling, churches that were once full of people, crowded, but are now just almost a shell of what they once were. Empty on Sundays. It's kind of interesting. In most cases, if you think about why this happens, it's actually not because they stopped teaching the Bible effectively. That's kind of a myth around this. That's possible. That's not the primary reason. The primary reason is because they stopped reaching the next generation effectively. Maybe the church struggled to keep up with the rate of change in our world. I mean, the world changes so fast. Maybe they had legacy programs and traditions that once were blessing so many people, but they struggled to adapt and move forward as the world was changing. Maybe they struggled to equip and empower and let go of leadership and entrust the next generation with leadership. Whatever the reason, the congregation got older and smaller, and the building got emptier and emptier. Because here's the thing, people don't accidentally find their way into this chair. Someone has to tell them. Someone has to tell them. I love how the writer of Psalm 78 kind of describes or paints a picture of this. He writes, I will open my mouth with a parable. I will utter hidden things, things from old, things we have heard and known, things our ancestors, that's that far chair, have told us. They were faithful. But here's the thing, we will not hide them from their descendants. We will tell the next generation the praiseworthy deeds of the Lord, his power, and the wonders he has done. And friends, just so you know, this isn't like a new idea or a random idea in the Bible. This shows up over and over and over. The very first command in the Bible, God says, be fruitful and multiply. In other words, Adam and Eve is not just about you, it's about the next generation. When God comes and makes a covenant with Abraham, that promise is not just for Abraham, it's for his descendants. In other words, Abraham, not just about you, it's for the next generation. When God gives Israel the law, he doesn't just say, follow these commands. He says, impress them on your children. Deuteronomy 6:7. In other words, Israel, these commands, this way of life, it's not just about you, it's for the next generation. And this commandment wasn't given just to parents with children for raising children. It was given to 20-somethings and single adults and empty nesters and married couples without kids. Because biblically speaking, the goal of each generation is the faith of the next generation. That's how the kingdom of God works. The goal of each generation isn't to make a name for itself, it's to pass the torch, hand off the baton to the next generation. And by the way, this is what I love about our church. This is what brought our family to Northshore. It's because this is a 3-chair church. I mean, after 52 years, we have this beautiful legacy of being a Jesus-centered church where the lost get found and the lonely find community and the hurting find healing. It's a place where marriages get saved and relationships get restored and divisions get mended. This is a place where it's led by the Spirit and empowered by prayer and guided by Scripture. Friends, I didn't start that, and you didn't start that. This legacy was handed down by people who said, we're going to pass the baton. We're going to tell the next generation the wonders of what God has done. And just to call it out, some of you have been here 20 years or 30 years or 40 years, and I just want to publicly honor you because you have faithfully passed the torch and equipped the next generation and inspired new leaders to lead when it could have been you. And now, it's our turn. And so for the next 2 weeks, we're going to talk about how we can be and remain a 3-chair church. Next week, we're going to talk really practically about our strategy and philosophy for reaching kids and students. You're going to meet some of our next generation staff. You're going to see a lot of them today, actually, in those referee jerseys outside. So make sure you go to the lobby and see what they're going to tell you about out there. But today, I want to talk to you about how it's possible to become a kind of 2-chair person. Or how churches get kind of caught up and get sucked into a 2-chair approach to church life. And it goes back to 3 simple reasons. Actually, better yet, there are 3 simple excuses that we make to kind of opt out of this call to reach and equip and love the next generation. So 3 excuses, real simple. First one is this. People will say, I'm too old. Whatever your age may be, you can get this kind of habit of saying, I'm too old for that. Getting older, it's kind of a funny thing. It's both inevitable and it's really hard to accept, right? This just past week, I was reading a little kid's book with Jude and it had these cartoon kind of drawings of biblical characters. And just for fun, I said, hey, which one looks like mommy? And he pointed to Eve, who had like long, dark hair, beautiful woman. I'm like, yeah, that's neat. That's perfect. And then I said, hey, which one looks like daddy? And he pointed to Noah, who had like long white hair and looked 100 years old, which wasn't very cool of my 1.5-year-old son. But it's kind of like that saying, inside the body of every old person is a young person wondering, what happened? Like what's happened to me? But here's the deal. The Bible speaks about the goodness of getting older. It's actually a good thing. Leviticus 19:12 says this, rise in the presence of the aged, show respect for the elderly, and revere your God. I kind of shared the idea with our staff that maybe we should do this here at Northshore, and they started standing up when I walked in the room, so we canceled that like really quickly. We're not doing that. Here's another interesting verse about aging. It's about the cost of special offerings at the temple. Leviticus writer says, if anyone makes a special vow to dedicate a person to the Lord by giving the equivalent value, set the value of a male between the ages of 20 and 60 at 50 shekels, but for a person 60 years old or more, set the value at 15 shekels. Friends, it's like a senior discount, like right there in the Bible, like, the sort of cheaper version at the offering, right? Or how about Proverbs 16:31? Gray hair is a crown of splendor. It is attained in the way of righteousness. See, this is not me getting older. This is me becoming righteous, okay? That's how that's working. But here's the thing about age, and the Bible's really clear about this as well. It's not just something to be honored. Age is something to be leveraged. Because it means you have experiences to share. It means you've gained wisdom that needs to be passed along. It means you have encouragement and a belief that could bless somebody so much if you gave it. But to do so, it takes effort, it's initiative. It takes staying in the game, if you will. One of my favorite pictures of this in the Bible is a man named Caleb. Some of you know his story. He's one of the 12 spies that Moses sent into the promised land, and one of only 2 that came back believing they could take the land. But because Israel didn't believe, they didn't have faith, they all had to wait for over 40 years before crossing the river. So when it came time for God's people to go into the promised land, Caleb was 85 years old. He waited 45 years to enter the land. But he never complained. He didn't get cynical. He didn't get nostalgic about the good old days. In fact, look at what he says to Joshua. He says, so here I am today, 85 years old. I am still as strong today as the day Moses sent me out. I'm just as vigorous to go out into battle now as I was then. Now give me this hill country that the Lord promised me in that day. And by the way, the hill country was the hard country. That was the hard land to take. But even at 85 years old, Caleb was like, hey, don't exile me off into sort of the seniors club or that kind of thing. Just give me one more hill. Just give me one more challenge. Just give me one more chance. Why? Well, so his descendants could have an inheritance. See, Caleb wasn't thinking about himself. He was thinking like about the next generation. Just give me one more hill. Just give me one more hill. In our context, that might be like saying, just give me a life group to lead with kids or students. Or just give me a young adult I can mentor and pass on some of the lessons I've learned. Or just give me a younger couple to counsel about marriage and family and how to raise a family. Because here's the thing, whether you're 85 or 55 or 25, you are never too old to invest in the next generation. You're never too far out. You're never out of date. You're never too old. Which brings me to a second excuse that gets shared a lot in churches. You'll all relate to this one. I'm too busy. I'm just too busy. And I can tell you, I know enough. I don't know all your stories, but I know enough about you and life and the demands in your life. You're probably all already too busy. You came to church today with a full calendar. The question is it full of the right things? Is it full of the things that are going to give you real life? Is it full of things that are about investing in the next generation? Because here's the thing, there is a big difference between having a busy schedule and having a full life. A busy schedule means you never feel like you have enough time, or you're always bouncing between kind of one event to the next, or you have a lot to do on your to-do list. That's a busy schedule. Having a full life means you're investing in something that counts. You're passing along wisdom to the next generation. Your life is about more than just you. And it happens when you make room to teach or coach or lead or mentor. And by the way, parents in the room, I'm not just talking about being a parent to your kids. I mean, I'm in that phase of life. I get it. We have 2 little ones at home, and parenting them takes up a significant amount of time. But that's not enough. You know why? Because our kids' faith development depends on more than just me and Nina. And research actually bears this out. It shows it's true. In fact, do you know what the primary difference is between kids who keep their faith as adults and kids who lose their faith later? You know what the primary difference is? Research shows it's not based on the kind of church you grew up in or the denomination you're affiliated with or how cool the youth pastor was. The research says the primary difference between kids who keep their faith and kids who may lose their faith is the presence of other Christ-following adults in their life. Think about that. You can throw all the programs and all the money and all the stuff and still lose the next generation if there aren't people who are investing in them. In fact, there's a book called Sticky Faith. It's a great book that describes this research, and they actually recommend the ratio should be 5-1. Not 5 kids to every 1 adult, 5 adults investing in the life of every kid. Which means parents, you know this about raising kids. You can't do it on your own. It's like the old African proverb, it takes a village to raise a child. It takes young adults and empty nesters and high school students and other people investing in younger people. And the Apostle Paul, he describes this same truth in a little bit from a different perspective. He describes it in that second letter to his apprentice Timothy when he says, "But as for you, Timothy, continue in what you have learned and have become convinced of." Why? Because you know those from whom you have learned it. In other words, Timothy was convinced about Jesus not just because of what he had learned, but because he knew the people from whom he was learning it. Timothy knew Paul. Timothy knew Silas. Timothy knew Mark. He knew Luke. He knew Aquila. He knew Priscilla. His faith grew strong because he had a web of relationships with people around him, which means we all have to make time and space for the next generation. Even if you're busy, even if you have to give up something that you love doing. But here's the thing, I promise you, you will find more joy, more meaning, more significance in investing in the next generation than your work or your career or your calendar or your hobby can give you. I promise you. Just ask some of the volunteers who serve downstairs or down the hallway in Northshore Kids. We'll have to watch this message later this week because they're serving all morning, but they wouldn't trade it. Or ask some of the life group leaders who are here every Wednesday night with our students. They give up every Wednesday night, week after week, but they wouldn't trade it because they realize, wow, I'm being filled up with a full life, not just by adding stuff to my calendar that the world says I should be doing, but investing in the next generation. Which brings me to one final excuse, and it's one that people rarely say out loud, but I think it can exist in our hearts. I'm not really interested. Nice message. Good job, Scotty. But at the end of the day, I'm just not that interested. I've paid my dues. I've given my time. I've outgrown all that stuff. Or in a church of this size, sometimes we'll think things like, I'll let the professionals do it. But there's a cost. There's a real cost to thinking this way. If people of faith don't take the next generation seriously, the next generation won't take faith seriously. They won't. They won't. See, all over the country, churches around the country, this chair is becoming more and more empty. Did you know that? Statistics are bearing this out. This chair is becoming more and more empty. Young people are leaving the church or not knowing about the church. They're leaving their faith or they don't know about faith. And it's happening more and more and more and more. And here's the thing, this chair being empty, it's not the culture's fault. It's the church's fault. And I'm not saying the culture's great. The culture's a mess. But here's the thing, the culture's always been a mess. There's always been narratives that compete with the story of Jesus. There's always going to be worldly temptations that can pull a young person's heart away from God. But that's not why that chair is empty. We are losing young people because the culture is more interested in shaping the hearts and minds of young people than we are. So if we want to see young people come to faith, if we want to see the next generation stand up for God's truth, His grace, His compassion, His justice, we have to take the next generation seriously. We don't just need to move from non-interested to interested. We have to move from interested to whatever it takes. Whatever it takes. whatever the music style, whatever the teaching style, whatever the learning style, whatever the hairstyle, like we're all in on making this happen. And the good news is anybody can do this. You don't have to be cool or hip or wear the right shoes. Young people don't need cool, they need care. And they don't need experts, they need your experience. And they don't need lectures, they need love. And if you feel concerned about where the world is going, if you're not satisfied with how our culture or society is going, the answer isn't rushing out and trying to get people to vote a different way. It's going upstream and solving problems by investing in the generations that are to come. I mean, just think about the difference that can make if that was our approach to solving the problems in our world. I mean, just imagine if every kid in our broader community knew that they were loved. Every kid knew. Just imagine if no kid in our broader community experienced hunger or homelessness. Imagine if depression rates in teens went down to 0 and graduation rates went up to 100%. Imagine if in 10 or 20 years, all around the country, their churches are being faithfully led by people who grew up right here at Northshore, because it's possible. This vision, this reality, it's possible, but only if together we make a commitment to tell the next generation the wonders of what God has done. And the best part is, I'm saving the best for last, folks. The best part is you get blessed. You get blessed even more. You get to see God move in ways that will inspire you, motivate you, fill you with joy. In fact, if all you want in life is joy, if all you crave is significance and purpose, don't make your life about you. That won't work out. Make it about investing in the next generation. That will work out. A few weeks ago, we asked one of the leaders here at Northshore who serves in our student ministry to sit down and talk with us about his experience serving the next generation. Tell us some stories. But what he didn't know is that we actually talked to some of the students he was leading to get their perspective on him as well. So take a look at this.
My name's Tim, and I've been serving at midweek for going into 3 years now. Before I came to Northshore, I always served in like the elementary level, and it never kind of evolved into, middle school or high school. And so then it was kind of like I was challenged or, okay, our kids are heading into middle school now. If you want to be connected and you want to keep them connected to the church and grow their faith, you got to be involved in that. At the time, my initial thought was it'd be good for growing my family's faith and growing that, only to see it grow me and evolve my belief and my connection with the kids and the relationship that is established there. We just got back from summer camp, went to camp with some nerves, knowing that I was gonna have a new mixed group as opposed to my normal 8th grade boys that I've been serving with. And actually just recently it kind of dawned on me or connected that whether I'm leading the 8th grade boys specifically or I'm present, I'm still gonna be connected with them. Because even like at camp, I didn't have all my 8th grade boys that were at camp, and they were still like checking in or come hang out or ask a question or come tease me or whatever. So it was like, okay, yeah, we've created this bond, and it's not just because I sit with you on Wednesday and go through the lesson.
We were at camp this last week. We got a group of some of your guys and asked them to talk a little bit about just like you and what you mean to them.
No, stop. Like, no.
It's been fun, as he's always upbeat and enthusiastic and encouraging. He's very funny, nice, he gives out candy every day. Yeah.
I liked him. I think it's been pretty easy to get along with him because he's always, being funny and being participational.
He likes to tease people, but we get to tease him back. He also really understands deep stuff and he's really approachable.
What has it been like as you've been at your first summer camp?
Awesome. I'm definitely coming again next year.
If you could choose, do you think you'd pick Tim again?
Yes.
Why do you say that?
Just because he's awesome in general. Every single time in life groups, he dives in deeper in every sermon, and like I've learned countless things from him. He has cheered me on, and like my journey with God, and I'm getting baptized like next week, and he's helped me with that. It's just really like encouraging and helpful because I know someone has my back and I can depend on him.
Tim, you've been a great inspiration and just getting me through camp while having fun and getting closer to God.
Thank you for being my leader. I just want to let him know that I think he's awesome. Yeah, and I'm always looking up to him. Tim, thank you so much for everything. You're a great leader, a great person. Thank you for making camp fun.
Wow. I don't even know what to say to that. It's not what I do. It's not why I serve, but this is what happens when you connect with kids and help them with their faith. So, wow.
This is what happens when you connect with kids and help them with their faith. This is what happens when you say, I'm not going to settle for a 2-chair kind of life. I want a 3-chair life, a life that matters beyond my own life. One of those kids from that video is going to get baptized this morning, and that's not just because of God or his parents, it's because of Tim. And now Tim gets to experience this joy, this meaning of being part of someone else's eternity. And those boys will be able to look back someday and say, I am who I am because of Tim, on a card like this. So here's what we're gonna do. One last part of this exercise. Go grab the card that you wrote on, find your card. I know you probably buried it away, pull it back out. We're not done with it yet. Get it back out. Everybody got your card? There was 2 sides. Turn it over to the blank side again. I wouldn't be here without blank. Get out your pen. Stay with me. I want you all to do this exercise. Pull out that pen. And on that other side now, I want you to write your name in the blank. Here's mine. I wouldn't be here without Scotty. So everybody write your name in the blank right now. Get out that pen. Write down your name. You can do this online as well. I wouldn't be here without, and write your name. And right now, just as you look at that, I just want you to stare at that card for a moment. Just stare at your name on that card. Just look at it. Now here's my question. Who's gonna say this about you? 20 years from now, who's gonna write down this card in a service like this about your investment in them, your belief in them, your sacrifices for them? And if you're not sure, there's another card you can fill out, and it's this one. It's the Connect card, where you can say, I wanna be part of a team. In fact, our entire Next Gen team is gonna be out in the lobby, throwing flags and acting like referees and having fun. But there's banners on the wall with opportunities for you to step up and say, I don't wanna go through life and have my name not show up on this card. I wanna make a difference. And to remind you why this matters, after I pray, we're gonna baptize some of the next generation right here at Northshore. And if you're a guest with us, here's the thing about baptism. It's a public declaration of a personal commitment to Jesus. And it's not less important when it's a younger person, it's more important. In fact, it's the most important thing, because it means God is still filling up these chairs. It means there's still hope for our future. And all the news feeds and all the media that would say the world's going to hell and you should give up or protect yourself, it's a lie, because God is at work and the next generation is coming and you can be part of it. Because that's how the kingdom of God moves through the world, one life at a time, one chair to the next. And now, get this, the best part is, it's your turn. It's your turn. So let's make it happen. Let me pray. Jesus, I'm so grateful that 25 years ago, someone walked up to me and said, hey, do you want to have lunch? because my life turned in that moment in a way I could never foresee. But you knew it was going to happen, God. Because every time you send someone out into the world to reach that next chair, a miracle happens. And God, we want to see more of those miracles happening in our midst today and every day going forward. We want to be a 3-chair church, not just looking back at the past or looking at the present, but on to the future. God, inspire us and move our hearts, convict us that there's more to life than just building my own life. There's building their life for the next generation. So help us do that today and this week, Jesus. We pray this in your name. And everybody said, amen.
Well, I love what Scotty shared with us in that message. You know, we've been in this series for the past couple of weeks called Worth It, and we've been sharing stories of people here at Northshore who are serving in a variety of ways. Today, we wanted to share Mike's story with you and hear what it means to him to serve with our students. Check this out.
My name is Mike, and I serve at midweek with the junior hires, specifically the 7th grade boys. I actually heard Pastor Justin's message last fall about the importance of the youth in our church, and it really compelled me to volunteer with our youth. I actually have 5 kids here at Northshore, and I realized that helping with kids would have a really important impact on our church's future. Serving with the junior hires here has really brought me outside of myself, and it's really helped me to focus on the most important thing, which is bringing people, specifically young people, to Jesus. It's amazing just by showing up at midweek each week. You might not have a really in-depth conversation one week, but the next week you might have a really good heart-to-heart with some of these kids. And you don't know what their family lives are like or what they're going through until you really take time and are consistently here with them. And then they open up about their faith or their faith journey or their belief in God or various questions. And it's just cool to be a part of this group of junior hires and these guys in particular, and to see them as they're kind of going through life and trying to help them and just be there to love on them. The relationships that I formed with the junior hires here have had a profound impact on me, and just kind of leaning into those relationships and learning about their lives. And it's allowed me to kind of honestly deal with some of my own struggles and issues in my own life. I would say if you're going to volunteer at Northshore, don't be hesitant. Just jump in and go for it.
Mike is such an incredible example of what it looks like to be together for the next generation and to make such a huge difference in students' lives. We have so many people who volunteer here at Northshore, investing their time to make an eternal impact. And we're also so grateful for all of you who give regularly here. It's because of your generosity that we're able to continue being a part of what God is doing in our community and beyond. If you'd like to be a part of giving here at Northshore, or maybe you're just ready to jump and serve on a team, you can do that at our website or fill out the connection card. Thank you all so much for joining us today. We'll see you back here online and in person next week. See you then.